All right. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Chris Trailer with ServiceNow, and I'm so excited to have everyone on the call today. Um, Joined by some great friends who we're going to introduce here in just a few moments over at the Ante, where they'll be sharing with us today their blueprint for transforming HR with AI and integrated systems to drive and empower employee experiences across your organization. So thanks so much for joining today, and let's go ahead and dive into some introductions. As I mentioned, my name is Chris Trailer, joined by my friends at the Ante today. I'm a global executive for employee experience here at ServiceNow. Squarely focused on working with our customers across the globe and how they leverage workflow, AI, and data to drive exceptional employee experiences and outcomes across their organization. And with that, I'd like to introduce our next Chris on the call, Mr. Chris Wilkerson.
Yeah, you get two Chris's today for the price of one. So I'm the VP of Technology, Innovation, and Strategy at the Anti. I've been working with the Anti for a little over 7 years and been in the ServiceNow ecosystem for many years. So the pre-Aspen days. So been interesting to see ServiceNow. Been along for the ride for quite a bit of it, and but looking forward to talking to you about AI today.
Excellent, Chris. Thanks for joining. And I always love when folks start with kind of dating themselves based on release. I think I'm only a Rome guy myself. So great to hear that. Greg?
Hey, thanks, Chris. Hey, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Greg Smith. I'm a managing partner and the chief executive officer here at the Anti. We're super excited to present the content that we have put together for you all today, mostly because there's a lot of energy around the artificial intelligence narrative out in the market, and we feel like we've got some compelling content to walk you guys through today to put some plans into action. I've personally spent about 25 years in the HR technology business. For the better part of my first 18 years or so, it was focused on core HR technologies like systems like UKG and Workday. But about 8 years ago, I got into the ServiceNow business, and ever since I've been exclusively focused on the employee workflow product line. So we're really excited to talk about that with you all today. I would also like to just introduce the Anti as a company a little bit to make sure that you all understand. I know you know ServiceNow, but I'd also like to make sure that you understand who the Anti is a company. So the Anti is a ServiceNow premier partner who's been in business since about 2017. We're probably one of the only ServiceNow partners who are exclusively focused on the employee workflow product line. And more specifically, mostly because of product demand, we spend probably 80-90% of our work focused on the HR service delivery product SKU itself. Today, we've got about 70 people on staff, and we've completed over 350 HRSD deployments. So I feel like we've got the credentials and the expertise to be somewhat of an authority on the topic here today. So Chris, I think I'm turning it back to you, and you've got some content to set the stage around just AI in general and how ServiceNow is thinking about it today.
Yeah, Greg, thanks so much for kind of the introduction of yourself as well as the ante. Before I dive in to that, which is a great segue, by the way, because I want to start with kind of really what are we about at ServiceNow before we dive into some of the foundational components around generative agentic AI. I think it's really exciting just given your background and kind of core HR systems. A lot of what we're going to talk about today, I'm a former Workday guy myself, is really going to be about being additive and complementary to those technologies to drive exceptional employee experiences for those outcomes. So I really appreciate your perspective there and would welcome you to chime in at any point today. Similar to what Greg just covered there a moment ago, I want to start very foundationally with ServiceNow and kind of our core tenets operationally as a business. And I really break this down for every single customer conversation initially, which is we're really only focused on three key things as a company. First and foremost, meaningful and curated experiences for employees, customers, HR, IT, contractors, whoever your end user might be, and leveraging those meaningful and curated experiences to deliver productivity and efficiency across enterprise processes, helping align people to work. And when you do those things on our platform, you reduce time and cost across those enterprise outcomes. And we're going to be talking a lot about HR today, but this value is not just for the CHRO, but it's pervasive to other areas of your business, all the way up to the CEO, the CFO, and the CIO of your business. When leveraging these meaningful and curated experiences and you're driving productivity and efficiency across those enterprise outcomes, you're reducing time and costs across the entirety of your business. We can jump to the next slide here. I'm not the driver today, for those that are wondering. Um, And more specifically, from an employee workflows perspective, we're really focused on simplifying outcomes and simplifying the complexity, rather, to empower your employees to thrive. We do this by connecting those fragmented HR and talent systems. They're not going anywhere. We want to be the system of engagement and action for your employees where they can interact and execute on the data that lives in these systems. We want to eliminate the manual administrative tasks that come along with that as much as possible. Now, we know we can't eliminate everywhere, but we can at least reduce the amount of time it takes for them to complete a task by bringing all that data into a central experience for them and allowing them to drive workflow and outcomes alongside of it. We want to promote an environment where insights for your people and talent historically has been quite limited due to these fragmented systems. And in doing so, we want to really promote an environment that drives engagement for your employees across the rest of your business. Now, I know we're going to talk and use the word employee workflows, employee outcomes today. We're not just talking HR. These outcomes are pervasive across areas of your business like IT, finance, workplace services, and even health and safety. And we're going to do all of this. This is where we're going to start to dip our toes in a little bit of the AI discussion today. And pardon me, by the way, I'm going to be a little bit art of the possible during my portion of this call, Greg and Chris. I trust you guys to bring our great customers on this call a little bit back down to earth and the reality of how some of this stuff can be accomplished. And I welcome you to do so. But we're really right now hyper focused here at ServiceNow on empowering the entirety of the employee journey with AI. And this really means a couple of key different things for us. We want to meet the employees where they are at. That is everything. And when it comes to those key moments that matter and supercharging those key moments across the employee journey with things like generative and agentic AI, it allows us to accelerate value, the value that we deliver to our employees. This reduces and eliminates, as I mentioned on the previous slide, the often burdensome and time and that the employees must shoulder on a day-to-day basis, just completing mundane tasks like an expense report, an issue with a laptop, or even simply scheduling a meeting. I, for one, am in a global role. I travel a lot. I'm not afforded with any sort of executive admin here at ServiceNow that helps me coordinate travel or helps me complete an expense report. This is an activity that I spend 10 to 12 hours historically on prior to leveraging agentic and generative AI to help drive some of these outcomes for me here at ServiceNow. Those are 10 to 15 hours I have back each week to focus more on customer outcomes and engagements that I have. So just wanted to throw this up there to just show the full spectrum of the ServiceNow employee journey that we service from hire to retire. And we deliver these modern AI powered search and conversational experiences across a couple key areas. First, just simply supercharging employee self service, making it easier to meet that employee where they're at, to drive the experience themselves and get to the value or the outcome that they're looking to or they're seeking to accomplish, whether it just be simply looking up a piece of information because they're getting ready to go out on maternity or paternity leave, to simply look at a policy, just those everyday requests. Alongside that, we want to leverage AI to build a more highly skilled workforce, one that optimizes the planning of talent and workforce development resources more effectively. And something we're not going to dive too deep into today is we also want to provide a connected office experience, both virtual as well as in-person experiences to boost safety, workplace efficiency, and accessibility for all employees across your business. And the key stakeholders that we seek to service across all of this: candidates, recruiters, employees, managers, your live agents, your leaders, and even your alumni across your business. Now comes the fun part of the conversation today, which is we're kind of at a critical moment in history right now. If you really look back at it, or critical moment in time, I should say, not necessarily just history, but AI is evolving faster than any technology ever before, simply put. We're scaling alongside that at a similar rate when it comes to employee expectations around what they want to get out of their business or the organization they serve from being productive, excuse me, and efficient. And they want experiences that help really solve that at a rapidly growing rate. The good news is, with all of the new tools that AI is surfacing literally on a day-to-day basis, it's easier than ever before to curate seamless AI-powered experiences that are actually going to drive this employee HR and operational productivity and efficiency that we're going to talk about today. And I want to keep the conversation really grounded by saying ServiceNow has been on an AI journey, both as a technology platform as well as a people organization ourselves for quite some time. Literally internally, years ago, we started in our own HR department with simple scripted workflows for employee outcomes, right? This over time evolved into machine learning based AI workflows for us. Something as simple as historically just asking our own conversational chatbot, what's the policy on XYZ, and getting a very scripted answer back was where we started. And it was delivered in a conversational interface. Over time, this has lent its way to getting a little bit more of a human-like experience with that. Hey, I see you're asking about our paternity leave policy. Do you have some leave coming that you like to schedule? It understands contextually what it is I'm trying to get look for, and then helps me navigate that journey organically. And now we've landed in this world of AI agents or agentic AI, which can power the enterprise workflows to deliver exceptional value for employees, customers, and operational leaders across your business. And none of the other things on this kind of maturity curve are going anywhere. They're all foundational pieces of it, but it is a foundational component of what we need to ultimately be successful in this era, which is why I'm hyper excited to dive into some of the content from the Ante here shortly. Now, I just want to talk just for a moment. Apologies, my screen froze for a minute. I want to talk just for a brief moment about this evolution, if you will, from chatbots to AI agents. Historically, these conversational chatbots, they were scripted, predefined, and driven by predetermined outcomes, if you will, and they required constant upkeep. Conversational chatbots, by the way, are not necessarily going anywhere. They're just not going to be so scripted and deterministic. They're going to be at least in the era of AI agents, these conversational experiences for employees become dynamic, fully autonomous, capable of really executing cross-functional tasks, activities, and even approvals across the enterprise landscape. This reduces key metrics for your organization, such as mean time to resolution, putting time back in the hands of your employees. And then if we really just kind of quickly put a visual behind this, the agentic AI empowered workforce is not about eliminating humans or anything like that. It's about creating, human powered, a digitally powered assistance for us as humans to really drive what it is we necessarily, don't need to be doing every day as individuals to allow us to focus on more meaningful tasks that actually have direct impact to the customer and the mission of our business. Because really, at the end of the day, this is all about, and I just threw a couple examples up here. This is about employees having a digital assistant, right? That can help them schedule a meeting or look up their job code in Workday seamlessly. Or if you're a process service owner, the ability to have an expense agent that helps you kind of maybe auto approve some of those expense reports that Chris is rifling your way every single week. But at the end of the day, these out of the box digital skills that our platform possesses really give you the ability to compose, communicate, schedule, and even properly handle sensitive data in a way like never before. And then, as always, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention this, and I'm going to hand it over to the Ante here in just a second. Our commitment to responsible AI is paramount for our platform. Everything that we're talking about today is developed with the human at the center of everything. Accounting for diversity and bias is key and critical to us as an organization. We want to be transparent and accountable, and we really want you guys to leverage the maturity and the security of the platform and the data that it ingests to drive these AI outcomes. And speaking of data, this is a really important point that I want to make sure we kind of land the plane on today as we talk about all of this is all this AI stuff is great, but our most strategic customers know that AI requires access to data in order to get from it what you want. And if you put AI agents to work on these disconnected, non-integrated, multi-instance systems, they're only going to add in fact, complexity to your environment. Because over 40% of enterprises, ServiceNow has found, store more than 1 petabyte of enterprise data. Now, for the anti folks, I joked about this yesterday. That's equivalent to 3,500 dump trucks filled with reams of paper. That's an immense amount of data, and that can either be our best friend or our foe. In order to navigate the complexity and the sheer amount of that data, we must do three things really well organizationally. We must have the ability to connect and access the right data instantaneously. We need to break down these data silos, not get rid of them, but we need to break down these data silos to fuel intelligent workflow. This allows us to connect structured as well as unstructured data to streamline in real time across all of your systems within a single platform. Once we've done that, we can better understand our data, ultimately turning it into intelligence that's contextualized and optimized for whatever the operational outcome is that we're seeking to achieve. And these AI-powered insights enrich and align to skills, roles, and even employee journeys. Once we've connected and understood that data, that's when we can actually take action on it to deliver better outcomes at a quicker rate and a lower cost for your organization across the enterprise. And here's just a quick little visual of some of what our customers are doing today to put Workflow Data Fabric to work to reduce costs up to over 70% to automate on the ServiceNow platform. So we'll leave this behind today, but I want to go ahead and pass this over to my friends at the Ante, who promised to keep this conversation grounded today and help us understand how they're actually helping some of our customers accomplish this.
Yeah, thanks, Chris. So to Chris's point, a lot of what AI Drive is driven from is a lot of the data in your environment. So one of the things we've noticed in a lot of our HR service delivery projects is this kind of this maturity model of starting with your emails and spreadsheets. You've got like disconnected processes, things like that that are happening in a HR environment that's not quite using a managed interactions. So like ServiceNow can bring the portal. You have your HR cases, so I can actually look at my own cases and see the status of them. That starts to bring that data together that Chris was referring to in the previous few slides. The next iteration would be a defined, and then you start getting into the levels 4 and 5, where you now have your data, you have your processes. Now you can start on that AI journey to leverage that data that you've established in the first 3 levels of the maturity model. And that just makes the project easier when you start to realize you need that foundational data. So don't try to start at AI if you don't know where that data lives in your environment. That's where we've seen some problems with other automated processes in the past is our customers want to start at level 5 with automated processes. We still have to kind of set up that foundational level of the levels 1 and 2. So we can't just leapfrog those. We still have to put those in place. So that's what this slide is kind of trying to convey, is that you can't just jump straight to AI if you haven't kind of had those conversations and established that baseline functionality that the AI is going to leverage.
Yeah, and Chris, what I love about what you have here, if I'm interpreting this correctly, it's recommending to our customers really that starting with strong foundational case and knowledge management is key and critical to really driving and leveraging the power that AI has to offer from an enterprise
Yes.
outcome perspective.
Yep.
Awesome.
So on top of that, we were kind of putting our heads together and realized that there's a lot of things outside of the technology that we want to consider as a start for our AI journey. So if you're going to come in and start with, you say, okay, I have company X, we're going to start with AI. One of the first steps we've kind of come to the conclusion of is you want to establish that sponsorship team. So if you want to have a group of people, you want to figure out who's involved, who wants to be involved in the AI journey with you, get that team together and start looking at the use cases and look at those value propositions. So the first step would kind of get that sponsorship buy-in. Then you start looking at the use cases that you want to kind of put together. Another step would be to confirm your enterprise strategy. So do you want to leverage Microsoft or Google solutions as an enterprise level and figure out where ServiceNow can kind of fall into that? So there's a lot of things outside of the ServiceNow ecosystem that you would need to evaluate for a successful AI implementation. Once you've established the enterprise strategy, you can align a roadmap and release plan. You can You want to pull in legal and ethics compliance just to make sure that everybody's on board. And once you've figured out where your different technologies live, in the sense of ServiceNow in our case, you want to create that product and delivery team to start implementing the ServiceNow AI solutions, leveraging the information you've learned in the previous steps to understand that, okay, we need to set up that workflow data fabric that Chris was talking about, where those pieces and parts can come into ServiceNow. You'll want to look at the usability and tech readiness. So looking at those different systems, where is my source of data coming from? What systems can I leverage? Maybe Workday has something you want to leverage. Maybe Oracle has something depending on your environment. Look at those different pieces and parts outside of ServiceNow and thinking about things like the workflow data fabric and different functionality that you might want to leverage inside of ServiceNow to improve your AI experience there. Once you've done that, you want to look at your use cases. So look at your use cases and look at the data. So if you haven't, for instance, set some of that foundational functionality, even on other systems, you may want to investigate what could you do, what would you want to leverage in, say, Workday or Oracle or a different system? What would you want to put there that ServiceNow could leverage to support the processes? So one of the things that we have definitely realized over the years, a lot of the stuff in the HR world is very process driven. So you want to make sure you have the data to support the processes and make sure that you know where all that is coming from. So
Yeah,
you have your,
and
go ahead,
Chris,
Chris.
one of the things that I love about what you have here, Chris, is that very last one, which is something I candidly spend a lot of time with our current customers, really working with them on, which is continuous value management, and you have it across the bottom here. You know, I love how you've laid it out from a employee, agent, administrator, or developer, or IT lens, which is you have requesters and fulfillers in your organization, and value looks very different to each persona, whether it be an employee or an agent. So just I'd love to hear your perspective a little bit more deeper on that one, just from a value measurement standpoint. What are some things that are really important for customers to be measuring from this AI, standpoint? If you have anything to add, I hate to throw you on the spot there.
Yeah, no, no. I think one of the things that we'll typically look at that case deflection. Are people finding the things they're looking for when they do a search, even a simple search for knowledge? That's a simple measurement you can look at. If I were to do the agentic AI, where I wanted to have an agent performing a particular task, you can measure how many times that agent has performed that task. I had one experience where we automated back in the days, we had our catalog items. I think I spent 2 weeks building that catalog item. It was used 10 times in 3 years, and 6 of those were me doing the initial testing. So at the time, everybody said we absolutely need this thing, and turned out a couple of years later that no one really used it, which is part of that continuous value measurement. Is are we going after the right things? And you can look at those looking at simple things like how many times was it triggered, how many times did people search for these things and find what they needed in the case of AI search. So there's definitely measurements you can put in there. I've had some conversations over the years where we started off kind of at the front. We almost did a reverse implementation of start with the reports you want and implement to give you the data that you're looking for. So sometimes you
Yeah.
can look at it from that lens too. Is okay, what does, like you said at the bottom here, we've got employees and we can throw managers in that too. So we'll have an employee/manager bucket. What does the manager care about measuring? So if you start looking
Mhm.
at that different persona, you can also come up with different things. You can look at it from a different lens, and that can help the implementation projects as well.
Yeah, it's a great point, Chris. I always think about just kind of with a lot of our customers, the case deflection is a great example. The agent really cares about how long it takes for them to, close out a case, right? That's the reality of from the time a case hits my inbox, how long is it taking me and how much is AI helping me to do that job faster? For the employee, it is similar but a little bit different, right? It's, hey, how long does it take me to get a request submitted, right? Get an answer back. And by the way, a live agent might not even be providing that answer if we've built our case and knowledge maybe the right way. And so I love your example there, Chris, of hey, it's making sure there's a strong foundation, and then it's measuring the value of that foundation, and then continuously measuring it even more so when we start
Right.
making some of these workflows and experiences, frankly, AI driven.
Yeah, so we've kind of touched upon our different personas at the bottom, and we've kind of referred to them earlier with Chris's slide. So we have our employee or the manager in our case. So we want to make sure that we're looking at the different places that AI can support those different personas. And of course, we have the HR agent and understanding where they can come in. And then we also have that administrator or developer in this case. So um, different AI functionality approaches different groups. So go ahead and one more slide here, Samra. So our different personas that we have. So AI search, for instance, most likely that's going to kind of support multiple personas, but primarily it's going to be that employee persona. I want to improve the search results so I can have that case deflection. The employee gets their answer quicker because they found the thing they needed using AI search. In essence, that does help the HR agent because they get that case deflection. But really, in my opinion, the employee would probably be the biggest winner of that one because they can get the answer they need and move on with their day. Another section that we have here too is the Now Assist for HRSD. So these are examples that actually Chris has provided us as kind of six of the top used ones. AI search, virtual agent, and the Now Assist ones are the ones where customers are getting the most value from Now Assist at the moment. And examples of the Now Assist ones are going to be case summarization, chat summarization, resolution notes, and KB article generation. Those are going to primarily serve the HR agents. And the reason that I'm kind of highlighting these out in different buckets is you're going to have different scenarios for each one. We'll kind of talk about in the next slide, different things to think about for the different groups that we've kind of highlighted here. Then another topic, which I know some of you on the call are probably interested in the most. Go back one. Go back
Yeah, could be,
again.
yeah, let's go.
Yeah.
Yeah, there we go.
So we've got the virtual agents. So Chris pointed out earlier that we've kind of come from that scripted space. So we've had the virtual agents for a while. It was running on it was using some different technology, and it had to be more of a scripted experience. With Now Assist for virtual agents, it makes that a little easier to configure. So you're kind of helping the developer a bit, but hopefully you're still helping that end user within the virtual agent space to get the answer they need, and having the answers come back from virtual agent to answer their questions better. A lot of the virtual agent piece builds on AI search too. So you want to kind of have both of those together, have that AI search functionality kind of set up and running, and then you're going to leverage that in the virtual agent. And the one that I'm kind of most excited about, and Chris had a few slides on that too. So I know this is kind of one of the interesting things for the Now Assist going forward, is really this AI agent world. So we've taken all of these pieces and parts that we have here. So kind of combining almost everything we have on the slide into an AI agent. An example that we've put together here at the Anti is just an auto case transfer, which is a pretty simple example of I have general inquiry cases coming in on a regular basis. We had quite a few customers that in the morning, I heard one referred to as the case captain. They called them the case captain. They were routing those cases every morning to the proper COE. And we've had one for quite a while that I'm aware of too that was doing a similar thing. They would get the general inquiries. They would say, okay, this is really a payroll case. Let's transfer it over to the payroll case. Well, we were able to create an AI agent that would essentially do that simple task. For all intents and purposes, it's a pretty simple task, but it was taking somebody at least an hour a day to go through that every day. So you start simplifying, you start having those simple tasks of routing cases. We put that into the AI agent, and now what happens is a general inquiry comes in. ServiceNow would then the agent would find the proper service and it would assign it there. So you're not losing the traceability and the normal functionality of the ServiceNow transfer case. It's just being done by an AI agent now versus a person showing up every morning and having to do that themselves. And the reason that we've started there was it's a simple use case that can build on.
Yeah, Chris, just two things to add to that I really love that you highlighted there. I think the first is start somewhere small and simple because there's plenty of value to be realized, right? We don't need to boil the ocean immediately. And also, right, keep in mind that all of this, right, is working together, right? AI agents is where we're currently at, but a lot of AI agents is also a lot of the historical greatness of the ServiceNow platform, in my opinion, at least. So I love that you touch on those two things, which is start somewhere, right? Find an area of your business that's ripe and simple to automate and execute on autonomy. And then also, right, from that, how do we then look at the next use case right across here? So I love these examples that you have here.
Yeah, and I was talking with somebody else just about AI in general earlier today, and we talked about just the adoption model of AI, and it feels like there's a lot of people, myself included, that is trying to kind of understand this whole AI space and where it lives. And if I'm going to automate a process that's 100 steps, it's going to be hard for me to trust that those all 100 steps were done correctly. But if it's 3 steps, I can trust that, and I can build those 3 steps and trust that it's going to do what it's doing because I can quickly see that it's doing what it's supposed to do. But the thing is then I can build another one that does another 3 steps, and
Yeah.
so now I can build, and before I know it, I've built 30 agents that does those 100 steps. So
Yeah.
it's
If I love that, Chris. Please continue.
yeah, so it's just it's kind of that, again, that simple model that we were talking about earlier with the stepping of the maturity model. If you start with something small, you can get that adoption of that single element and you can add on to it. You don't have to build all 100 steps in one spot, and then no one trusts it. It doesn't work right. One step in the 100 isn't quite right, so people lose faith in it. You start simple and you kind of get that adoption, and that starts bringing you up that adoption model too.
Yeah, I love the reference to the maturity curve. Samara, if you can go back one slide, I'll give a good customer example of a real live customer example of what Chris is talking about. And I said Chris, I keep thinking I'm talking to myself. Um, we had a customer that started many years ago leveraging virtual agent just simply to say they wanted employees to just go there and they only had one, VA topic built. What is the status of my ticket? Right. And then the virtual agent would go and look at the status of the ticket, retrieve that information, come back, communicate it to the employee. Right. That's a definition of what virtual agent was years and years ago. Then we introduced, AI workflows, supercharged that a lot with machine learning and natural language understanding. But then really when we put Now Assist in place, right, if you look at the right-hand side of your screen here, that's actually where we could start powering that experience with, here's the status of your ticket. Do you want to follow up or send an email, right? Or here's a summarization of like the steps that have been taken thus far. It's supercharged that initial request with a little bit more than just what I was asking it for simply. Now with AI agents and what you guys even talked about with the auto case transfer, it can even look at the case potentially and say, hey, there's a hang up for this reason. The person's out of the office. Let me transfer this case as an example. I don't
Hmm.
know exactly what you guys have built there. Or it might say, here's the status of your ticket. I realize there's an issue. Let me go out and schedule a meeting with the stakeholders so you guys can all get on the phone and discuss the issue and get it resolved quickly. So it's answering my request. It's providing contextualization and summarization via generative or Now Assist, and then it's also executing autonomously to get me to an outcome more quickly.
Thanks for that. So to kind of sum up the different things from a preparation perspective, the reason I kind of put these in the 4 buckets is really this next slide here. If I'm starting my AI journey, again, we have those 10 steps earlier where we kind of had the roadmap of establishing the kind of that corporate level, enterprise level strategy and having those conversations. But once you've landed on ServiceNow and you're wanting to leverage a Now Assistance inside of ServiceNow, the reason why I've broken it up in those 4 different groups on the previous slide is really to kind of simplify as much as possible the thought process to kind of get you started. If I'm going to be focusing on something like AI search, I want to look at my knowledge articles and my catalog items and make sure that there's meta fields and they're going to show up appropriately. So if I'm focusing on an AI search as my starting point into the AI world, your best bet is going to be looking at that data, making sure that things come back, making sure that you added things to the meta. I had a good example provided me by somebody about, I don't want Illinois non-union stuff to come back for an Illinois union worker. I'm a union worker. I know that because of the HR profile. They live in Illinois. I can add fields to the knowledge articles to make sure that those show up for that person. So we can evaluate the data and kind of add things into our different the different fields and knowledge articles to bring those back to the appropriate person so that they're not getting Washington State non-union articles on top of the Illinois one. They got to dig through it. So by using the AI search, the best thing I heard about that was this person did that example with the Illinois union. And the first time they did it, it came up as it showed a couple union ones. So it was showing like Ohio and Illinois, whatever like that, whatever it was. And he went to do the demo again, and the other ones didn't show up because the AI had learned. It knew that he was in Illinois, he was in person, he was in Illinois. So the AI actually learned the proper one. So it kind of threw him for a loop in the middle of his talk track where he was going to talk about the fact that other things came up, but the AI had learned, so it came back correctly. And that is because of combination of the AI learning, but also because of data elements that were added to the different policies. So if you're starting in an AI search world, definitely want to kind of think about it in terms of what you're going to be searching and what you want to come back.
Chris, what I love about that, I had never heard that customer example. That's the first time you had shared that with me. So I look forward to learning more about that. It's not just what I heard from there is it's not just leveraging what it currently knows about me. It's learning as it goes along the way and
Mm-hmm.
inherently enhancing the experience and the value and the outcomes it delivers along the way. I think
Right.
if I understood you correctly.
Yep. Yep. And it was kind of funny, and I can hook you up with the person who told me the story. But it was pretty humorous that that came back that way, that I was able to learn those things. So
I need to learn how to do my demos like that where it's learning real time.
there you go. So the other category that we had was the Now Assist for HRSD. So Now Assist for HRSD is essentially a packaging that ServiceNow's put together of different things that are helpful for HRSD in the Now Assist world. It bridges different technology, so it does kind of step into the virtual agent piece and other things like that. The reason I wanted to split it out, though, is again for the simplicity of, are there scenarios that are simple, like the case summarization, the resolution notes, those kind of more like surgical kind of functionality pieces? If I'm going after that, I want to look at different functionality that could be beneficial to, let's just say, HR service agents, to keep it simple. Could be more, but we're just going to keep it simple as HR agents because that's what a lot of the current Now Assist for HRSD is built around, are those things that they're doing repetitively that the AI can help them do going forward. So if you're thinking about those kinds of those case summarization equivalents, you want to look at how ServiceNow has done things in analysis for HRSD to kind of help that thought process and get off the ground running with some of those things. Virtual agents. If you've done virtual agent in the past, which I believe a few of you on the call have, many of you have started to kind of, I know, looking at the AI for virtual agent piece, but it is a different underlying technology that makes it a little bit easier to do the virtual agent. But you want to really look at those topics, like Chris mentioned earlier, the scenario that he pointed out from the virtual agent that the customer had, the simple one for the case, what's the state of my case, starting with those kinds of things and making sure that you're planning topics that would be relevant to your employees for that. And then, in my opinion, kind of the fun one is, again, bringing all these things together with the AI agents. Think about those simple processes. Don't get so bogged down in the 100-step processes that you want to build together. Think about these as individual things working, so I can do the 3-step process, and I can have that 3-step process agent work with another 3-step process agent. You can work them together. So having 20, 25 agents might not be the worst thing, because you're now doing those 100 steps modularly and not having one agent and spending all of that time building a single agent that does tons of steps. Think about those simple processes that can help automate your HR professional time.
Yeah, and thanks for sharing those, Chris. What I love about what the Ante has put together here from a readiness strategy standpoint is I think there's someone for everyone. There's something here for everyone on this slide from a readiness standpoint, right? Like, I always use virtual agent as the example. There are a lot of processes that we experience on a day-to-day basis, or a lot of moments in which we experience that are just simply us scrambling to find information, right? It's already out there. We just don't know how to get to it. We don't even maybe want to know, we don't, maybe don't even know how to search for it. I'll give you a good example, Chris. You've heard this from me 1,000 times. I've got a 6-month-old daughter at home.
Mhm.
Back in October, right before she was born, I realized I hadn't even looked up my, ServiceNow is great, by the way, paternity policy. And I was like, I don't know where to go for this. So I was like, let me just go ask our Now bot, which is embedded in Teams, like, what's the policy? And I more needed to know how to notify my manager. Is it a formal email? Is it an informal process? Simple question. I'm having a kid at the beginning of November. What do I do? Spit me back with all the knowledge articles that I could ever need, pointing me to the proper service requests that I needed to put in very quickly. All that information already existed for us here as employees of ServiceNow in the very least. And that's just simply building out a topic that supports that kind of conversation and that query. And then over time, you can kind of mature into some of these other things that you mentioned there as well.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thanks for that. I think we're on to the Q&A. So if anybody has any questions, we'd be happy to answer them. And I hopefully kind of wanted to close with the readiness thing as kind of a wrap-up slide. So definitely, if you have any questions, be happy to address them.
Yeah, and I did see one in there, and I'd love to pull Greg back in for this one because I think I'd love for someone other than you and I to speak for a moment, Chris,
Yeah.
if Greg's willing.
Yeah,
There's a great
absolutely.
question in the chat that says that we mentioned that customers should and Chris, you specifically mentioned customers should have an AI executive sponsorship team. The question is, what does a customer sponsorship team look like? What's the genetic makeup of it? Greg, do you mind answering that for the organization or the
Yeah,
call?
yeah, I'd be happy to, Chris. That way you both get a chance to rest your plate for a second. Yeah, I mean, I think I've seen many times, and I would guess that a lot of people on this call today sit within the technology space of product owners or application owners, but that's usually not a great place to start like a business exec initiative like this. AI is a very broad and reaching enterprise type technology that you need to form an alliance and a team to make sure that, hey, the core leadership team is aligned and that they're going to do the right thing for the organizational because as we've seen with AI, like it's evolving very rapidly, and we expect we're in the early days now, but we expect AI to be a pervasive part of the enterprise long term. So I think it's really important to make sure that you've got a good executive sponsorship team to sponsor the initiatives to get started. And from my perspective, if I'm involved with an engagement advising people about who needs to be on that journey with those people running the project, one, I'd want to make sure that I'd have some operational leader who's going to help champion that through because many of the people who are going to be using AI every single day are your employees in your workforce. And if you don't have those operational leaders on the bus and ready to help improve adoption and making sure that it's the right thing for the teams, it's going nowhere fast. Two, I think you need to have the employee service management executive. A lot of times that's represented in the vice president of HR operations kind of role. But it's true with any type of service management organization. So you can take the stamp of HR off of that, but just say executive service management leader is the second person I'd want to make sure because it's their teams, the HR agents, who are going to be heavily affected by this technology in a very positive way. Third person on the bus would be the ServiceNow application owner. And obviously, the CIO of most organizations have a keen interest in what the AI strategy is. And last but not least, you want to make sure that you bring your legal and compliance team along for the journey because the last thing that you want to do is make some investments, surface some use cases, get 90% complete, and somebody pokes their head up and says, hey, what about legal and compliance? It's much easier to get their buy-in and support and make sure that you're doing the right things in the early days of a project versus on the tail end of the project.
I love that, Greg. And the one thing that jumped out at me there, based on your recommendation, was really just the diversity, right? The functional diversity of that team, and I think that's a critical part, Greg. Right? Would you agree? It's
I
just
agree.
different owners from different parts of the organizations with different perspectives is probably a key ingredient in your guys' eyes.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, it's one thing to go implement a departmental piece of technology, but when you implement a technology that's pervasive across the enterprise and is a platform by nature, you absolutely need that cross-functional representation to do it well.
Yeah, absolutely. Could not agree with all that more. I'm monitoring the chat a little bit here as you talk, Greg. Another question we got in the chat just a moment ago are what are the top AI use cases that most customers are starting with? I think right now, for that one, what I would say is I'll give one for a requester, right, or an employee or a hiring manager or just an organizational leader, and then I'll give one for kind of your back office fulfiller. AI search is huge. I met with a very large banking organization in EMEA earlier this week, and the primary thing that they're using is AI search, right? They have a very eloquent portal with a simple search bar, nothing else on it. There is a little bit of a menu, but that was by design. They built the search bar front and center because they just wanted the employee to simply query the system, kind of chat GPT style. And then they're really focused on making sure that the information that's served up is high quality. So AI search, I think, is number one from a fulfill or requester, excuse me, standpoint. And then on the requester side, almost all of our generative customers or Now Assist customers are leveraging case summarization, right? This is making it more easily consumable for your live agents to actually ingest all of the information associated with a case, and then the ability for them to then more quickly respond and act and execute on the activities and tasks that are associated with that case. Anything to add, Greg, from your side or Chris as well?
No, I think you covered it well, Chris. But another question came in while you were talking. So if you don't mind, I'll direct this one to Chris Wilkerson.
Yeah.
So, Chris, how long does it typically take to configure and launch something like an AI agent?
So the interesting thing about that question is the AI agent piece of it. So we mentioned in one of the slides the fact that the AI agents build on other technologies that you establish in the foundational information. So to actually build the agent can actually go relatively quickly. We actually have one of my coworkers, Prince Evans Quachi, on the call who built the example that we talked about earlier. Didn't take it took maybe a couple weeks to actually build the agent, but that was because the data and the foundational information was there. So if the information is there and you keep the process simple, it can take as little as a week or two, maybe even less, depending on how complicated your scenario is. And that's kind of the benefit of starting small with like that 3-step process versus 100. You can get something out there quickly, evaluate how well it's working, instead of spending months and months building a bunch of different steps into an agent and then finding out your foundational data wasn't as good as you thought it would be. So setting up that foundational data is key, but the actual building of the AI agents is relatively quick inside of ServiceNow. So it's funny to me when Prince was showing me, it's just you actually type out what you want it to do. You don't actually, it's not a bunch of Java code or anything crazy like that. You actually say, I want to reroute this using this tool. And it's pretty straightforward to actually build a lot of those things. There were some things we had to build in Flow, but really if the data was there, it really didn't take a terrible amount of time. So that's the kind of the biggest strategy I would kind of take away from here is if you want it with the AI, agentic AI stuff, start simple, make sure your data is where it needs to be, and then you'll be able to kind of get moving pretty quick in the AI agent space. And then again, you can build on top of it. You can build multiple agents that will feed off of each other. And I'm pretty sure Prince can correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that it's as simple as saying, use this other agent to do this, and then I'll do this on the agent I'm building. So you can actually build on top of them pretty easily.
And Chris, if I'm interpreting and hearing you right, this feels a lot like the analogous features of like RPA or even integration systems where it's highly variable depending on the use case, but it's
Mhm.
also largely dependent on the data set that you're pulling in or pushing
Yes.
out.
Yes.
Yeah, and what I love about that, Chris, too, is you really called out like the value of the AI Agent Studio, and we talked a lot about the importance of having a strong foundation, because when that strong foundation is in place and you kind of turn on or plug in, if you will, that AI Agent Studio, it's as simple as prompting it to do what you want it to do because it already
Mhm.
has access to all the right information and all the right workflows. So
Yep.
really great to hear your perspective as well as some of Prince's. Um, Fed to you by proxy, I will say, on that one.
Yep.
Great. Well, hey guys, I think we're coming to close on the time that we've got allocated today. So we want to cover some fun stuff before we run out of time. At the top of the call, we mentioned that we did have a raffle as a part of this. So those of you that stayed with us the whole time were eligible to receive some Apple AirPods. So we're happy to announce and excited for Corey Millie Corey, we've got your email address, and somebody from the Anti will reach out, and we'll figure out how to get those AirPods back into your hands. If we want to go to the next slide, there was a question in here, Chris, for you probably about internships, and on the next slide we'll get to how do we reach out to the Anti and specifically Chris Wilkerson to get in the queue to talk about how do you get in the AI game. But if you want to take a moment for our attendees out there, and we've got a QR code on the screen that gives you a very nice one pager of a lot of the content that we covered today, that you can use as an asset to think about how do you put together your AI journey, and how do you go about that to get started? Because if you've been paying attention along the way, we started with Chris Traylor talking about a lot of theory and hypothesis about what the art of the possible is. Chris Wilkerson laid out a pretty nice blueprint of, hey, here are the 10 steps of things that we need to do or keep an eye on as we're thinking about AI. And we got a little bit more pointed with some specific use cases, and those were, in fact, the top 7 use cases that we are seeing adopted out there in the world today. So I'm excited to wrap up the call today, but if hopefully I've filibustered long enough so that you can pull out your cell phone and grab that QR code, but we'll also send out the recording afterwards. But for my person like asking about internship opportunities, you can reach out to either myself or Chris Wilkerson. That's our direct QR code to our LinkedIn profiles. And if you're attending Knowledge 2025, the Anti will be out at the booth at 2709. And there's some instructions behind that QR code about how to get in touch with us.
Yeah, and Chris, I'd be remiss, sorry, Greg, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention uh, everything we talked about today. And this is from the ServiceNow standpoint. The Ante is going to have a lot of great knowledge content for you guys at booth 2709. There's going to be people far more intelligent than me on all of these topics today. Chris Wilkerson, that's not directed at you. That's a comment for me talking about this stuff at Knowledge. So if you're going to be there, please reach out to Greg, Chris, myself. Would love to see you in person. Would love to chat about this next week and even get some feedback from you on not only this session, but really the entirety of the content that's going to be happening next week.
Great. Well, hey, thanks, Chris Traylor, and thanks to ServiceNow for joining us today. I think we had some really meaningful content. Thanks, Chris Wilkerson, as always, for bringing your expertise to the call. Hope everybody has a great day, and we'll look forward to seeing you at Knowledge or somewhere else out there in the field.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks, everybody.
I know.